I think the first thing is to learn about the issues. I think we have to always deal with the fact that, older people think that young people do not understand the substance, the complexity of the issues. So prepare yourself well by understanding the issues, what is happening to our planet, what can be done. The second part is reach out to the people who are closest to you, who will be most willing to listen to you in your family, your relatives, in your football club, or in any other network in your community. Begin to engage them and begin to engage on practical things. We cannot solve climate change as an individual, but we can begin to make a big difference as individuals to all these actions that we can take, perhaps in the context of our local school, or in our home, or in our village, or in our city. I think to look for practical areas of engagement where others can join you and to reach out. These are the kinds of things that I think every young person can do, and at the end of the day, it's the young people who have the greatest interest that we do something about climate change. And I certainly have my greatest faith in young people becoming involved, because they can make a difference. I think things will vary, it depends on you as an individual. Some people feel comfortable standing on a soapbox in a park like Hyde Park, or perhaps in Singapore in one of the squares, and saying, I think the world should be different, and let these people do that part. Others, maybe very talented ICT specialists, they can start maybe creating some computer imagery about what is happening in terms of climate change in their local city or their local beach, for instance. I think there is no one rule, but I think speaking out is certainly something that young people should do, because if you don't speak out, you won't be heard. Now, whether you do that with a placard and protesting, or whether you do it in terms of reaching out to your community, your networks, these are choices each one of us has to make. And in each culture also there are different ways of expressing one's views. In some cultures, young people have to address their elders differently than in other parts of the world. So there's no rule, but there is one principle. Don't just sit back and be silent. I think if you paid more attention to all that which unites us rather than divides us, it'll be very easy, because a young person in Singapore, or a young person in Australia, or in the United States, or in Brazil, at the end of the day, we are increasingly aware of the fact that we're all living on one planet. We live in different cultures, in different economies, in different realities. But the difference between a poor person in Europe and a rich person in Europe, and a poor person in Brazil and a rich person in Brazil, is perhaps far bigger than the difference between the equivalents in North and South. I think we sometimes allow ourselves to be defined far too much by dividing definitions of the past than that which actually unites us. And at the end of the day, whether you and I are a young person in Latin America or in Europe, we have a common interest, we have a common aspiration. It's just our realities are very different, and we have to recognize that, but that's not a reason to divide from each other. Well, first of all, last year was the first year when more than half the world's population actually lived in cities. So the economic and social and physical reality of Singapore as a city-state in many ways is foreshadowing where most of us will live in the future, and therefore how we manage both the urban space but also manage the footprint of our urban centers on the surrounding areas in terms of the rural areas, the biodiversity, the watersheds that keep us alive in the cities. All that is part of it. And Singapore, certainly in the field of water, has taken many bold steps in recent years. I also hope that Singapore will become a leader on urban energy efficiency issues, urban mobility issues, because it is a modern city-state that can foreshadow many of the developments already today that others will take longer to develop, do not yet have the resources to implement. To be a pioneer is something that I think Singapore has demonstrated in its history time and again. Today, at least part of its pioneering role should be one on sustainability and urban living. I would simply say, don't despair, don't get depressed, see it all, look at all the opportunities that are out there, take a look at what we call the green economy in UNEP, and you'll get a lot of ideas for what can happen differently in our world. But become involved and be active. That's the most important principle. From there flows many ideas and options. And good luck.
Thank you so much.